The Extraordinary Tale of Henry Sugar by Roald Dahl. At the age of 41, Henry Sugar was single and affluent. His wealth stemmed from a prosperous father who had since passed away. He remained unmarried, as he was too self-centered to distribute any of his fortune to a spouse. Standing at 6 feet 2 inches tall, he wasn't as handsome as he believed himself to be. He placed immense importance on his appearance, using a high-end tailor for his suits, a bespoke shirt maker, and a custom boot maker for his footwear. He applied an expensive aftershave to his face and maintained soft hands with a cream infused with turtle oil. His hair was cut by a stylist every 10 days, and he routinely treated himself to a manicure. His front teeth had been capped at great expense to eliminate an unpleasant yellow tint, and a plastic surgeon had excised a small mole from his left cheek. He drove a Ferrari that likely cost him as much as a modest cottage. During the summer months, he resided in London but would escape to the West Indies or the south of France as soon as the first frost hit in October, where he would stay with affluent friends. All of his companions were wealthy, having inherited their fortunes, while Henry had never held a job in his life. His personal motto, crafted by him, was that it was preferable to face a minor reprimand than to undertake a burdensome task. This notion amused his friends, as men like Henry Sugar meander around the globe like drifting seaweed. They are particularly apparent in cities like London, New York, Paris, Nassau, Montego Bay, Cannes, and St. Tropez. While they aren't overtly malicious, they're also not virtuous, holding little significance in the grand scheme of things. They merely serve as part of the background. These affluent individuals share a common quirk: an overwhelming desire to amass even more wealth. For them, $1 million is never enough, nor is 2 million. They harbor a restless craving for increased riches, driven by a constant dread of waking up one day to find their bank accounts empty. They all employ similar strategies to grow their wealth, engaging in stock trading and monitoring price fluctuations, gambling in casinos on games like roulette and blackjack, and betting on horse races and anything else they can. Henry Sugar once placed a bet of £1,000 on a tortoise race on Lord Liverpool's tennis court, and wagered even more with a man named Esmond Hanbury on a ludicrous bet that involved letting Henry's dog out into the garden. They observed it through the window, but prior to letting the dog outside, each individual had to predict what the first item would be that the dog would lift its leg against. Would it be a wall, a post, a bush, or a tree? Esmond opted for a wall, whereas Henry, who had been carefully observing his dog's behavior for several days in preparation for this exact wager, selected a tree and ended up victorious. To combat the suffocating monotony of their idle, affluent lives, Henry and his companions resorted to these ludicrous games. As you might have gathered, Henry didn't shy away from a bit of trickery with his pals if an opportunity presented itself. The wager involving the dog was certainly not fair, nor was the bet on the tortoise race, where Henry fancied his chances by secretly administering a dose of sleeping powder into his competitor's tortoise shortly before the event. Now that you have a rough sense of who Henry Sugar was, I can commence with my narrative. One summer weekend, Henry made the journey from London to Guildford to visit Sir William Wyndham. The residence was splendid, as were the surrounding grounds. However, upon Henry's arrival that Saturday afternoon, it was already pouring rain. Tennis was off the table, croquet was impossible, and swimming in Sir William's outdoor pool was out of question. The host and his guests sat forlornly in the drawing room, watching the raindrops cascade down the windows. The extremely wealthy harbor significant resentment towards poor weather, for it is the one discomfort their wealth cannot alleviate. Someone in the room suggested, "Let's play a game of canasta for some high stakes." The others found this to be a marvelous idea, but since there were 5 participants in total, one would have to remain out. They shuffled the cards, and Henry drew the lowest card, ensuring his exclusion. The other 4 seated themselves and began the game as Henry felt irritation at being sidelined. He meandered from the drawing room into the grand hall, gazing at the artwork for a few moments before strolling through the house, utterly bored with nothing to occupy his time. Eventually, he wandered into the library. Sir William's father had been a renowned collector of books, and the expansive room's walls were lined with books from floor to ceiling. However, Henry Sugar was far from impressed. His interest was non-existent. The only genres he engaged with were detective novels and thrillers. He aimlessly circled the room, hoping to discover any books in preferred styles. Yet the tomes in Sir William's collection were all leather-bound volumes bearing titles from authors like Balzac, Ibsen, Voltaire, Johnson, and peppy, subtly tedious material in Henry's view. He was on the verge of leaving when something peculiar caught his attention, a book that noticeably stood out from the rest. Its slim profile would have easily gone unnoticed had it not been protruding slightly from the neighboring volumes. Upon pulling it from the shelf, he discovered it was merely a cardboard-covered exercise book, similar to those used by school children. The cover bore a dark blue hue without any inscription. As Henry opened the exercise book, the first page displayed a handwritten note in ink that read, "A report on an interview with Imrat Khan, the man who could see without his eyes, by Dr. John F. Cartwright, Bombay, India, December 1934. That seemed somewhat intriguing, Henry thought to himself. He flipped to the next page, encountering handwritten text in black ink, clear and orderly. As he read the initial 2 pages while standing, he found himself increasingly inclined to delve deeper. The content was captivating. He took the small book to a leather armchair by the window, settled in, and began again from the start. Here's what Henry discovered in the little blue exercise book. I, John Cartwright, am a surgeon at Bombay General Hospital. On the morning of December 2nd, 1934, I was in the doctor's lounge enjoying a cup of tea, joined by 3 colleagues, Dr. Marshall, Dr. Phillips, and Dr. McFarlane, who were also taking a well-deserved tea break. A knock interrupted us. "Come in," I called out. The door opened, and an Indian man entered, smiling as he addressed us. "Excuse me, could I ask you gentlemen for a favor?" The doctor's lounge was a private space, reserved solely for doctors unless an emergency arose. "This is a private room." "Doctor," McFarlane remarked sharply. "Oh, yes, I realize that. I apologize for intruding, but I have something truly fascinating to show you." We were all somewhat annoyed, remaining silent. "Gentlemen," he continued, "I am a man who can see without using his eyes." Although we didn't encourage him to continue, we also didn't ask him to leave. "You can cover my eyes in any manner you choose," he declared. "You can wrap my head with 50 bandages, and I will still be able to read a book to you." He appeared utterly serious, and my curiosity began to awaken. "Come here," I instructed him. He approached, and I said, "Turn around." He complied, and I placed my hands firmly over his eyes, keeping the lid shut. "Now," I said, "one or the other." The doctor in the room will display some fingers. I need to know how many he holds up. "Doctor." Marshall displayed 7 fingers. "7," replied the Indian again. I indicated that doctor. Marshall clenched both fists, obscuring his fingers completely. "No fingers," the Indian stated once more. I indicated that doctor. Marshall again made a tight fist, hiding all his fingers. "No fingers," the Indian reiterated. I took my hands away from his eyes. "Not bad," I remarked. "Hold on, doctor," Marshall interjected. "Let's try this." A white doctor's coat hung on a peg by the door, which doctor Marshall took down and fashioned into a long scarf. He wrapped around the Indian's head and secured the ends firmly at the back. "Try him now, doctor," Marshall instructed. I retrieved a key from my pocket. "What is this?" I queried. "A key," he responded. I returned the key and raised my empty hand. "What is this object?" I asked. "There isn't any object," the Indian replied. "Your hand is empty." "Doctor," Marshall uncovered the man's eyes. "How do you do it?" he asked. "What's the trick?" "There is no trick," the Indian clarified. "It's a genuine skill I've honed over years." "What kind of training?" I inquired. "Forgive me, sir," he replied, "but that's a private matter." "Then why are you here?" I pressed. "I came to ask you for a favor," he said. The Indian was a tall man around 30, with light brown skin resembling a coconut's hue. He sported a small black mustache and had an unusual tuft of black hair growing around the edges of his ears. Dressed in a white cotton robe, he wore sandals on his bare feet. "Gentlemen," he continued, "I am currently making my living by performing in a traveling theater, and we have just arrived in Bombay tonight. We are set for our opening performance. Where will it take place?" I inquired. "In the Royal Palace Hall on Asia Street." He responded. "I am billed as Irat Khan, the man who sees without his eyes, and it is my role to promote the show effectively. If we don't sell tickets, we don't eat. What relevance does this have for us?" I asked. "Very interesting for you," he remarked. "There's plenty of excitement. Allow me to elaborate. Whenever our troupe arrives in a new city, I head directly to the largest hospital and request that the doctors bandage my eyes. I ask them to do it with the utmost expertise, ensuring my eyes are completely covered multiple times. It is crucial that this task is performed by doctors. Otherwise, people might suspect that I'm deceiving them. Then, when I am properly bandaged, I step out onto the streets and engage in a perilous act." "What do you mean by that?" I inquired. "What I mean is that I partake in something highly risky for someone who lacks sight," he replied. "What exactly do you do?" I asked. "It's quite fascinating," he said. "You'll witness it if you be so generous as to wrap me up first. It would be a significant favor for me if you could assist with this small task, sir." I glanced at the other three doctors. Dr. Phillips indicated he needed to return to his patients. Dr. McFarland echoed the same sentiment, and Dr. Marshall remarked, "Well, why? It may seem entertaining, yet it won't require much time." "I'm with you," I stated, "but let's ensure we do this thoroughly. Let's guarantee cannot see." "You're very gracious," the Indian remarked. "Please proceed as you see fit." Dr. Phillips and Dr. McFarland exited the room. Before we wrap him up, I said to Dr. Marshall, "Let's first secure his eyelids. Once that's done, we'll fill his eye sockets with a substance that is both soft and adhesive." "What about dough?" Dr. Marshall inquired. "Dough would be ideal," he confirmed. "Excellent," I replied. "If you could quickly head to the hospital bakery for some dough, I'll prepare him in the surgery and seal his eyes." I guided the Indian from the restroom down the lengthy corridor to the surgical area. "Lie down here," I instructed, pointing to the elevated bed. He complied, and I retrieved a small bottle from the cupboard featuring an eyedropper. "What you see here is collodion," I informed him. "It will solidify over your closed eyelids, making them impossible to reopen." "How can I remove it afterward?" he asked. "Alcohol will easily break it down," I replied. "It's completely safe. Now, please shut your eyes." The Indian obeyed, and I applied collodion over both eyelids. "Keep them shut," I instructed, waiting for it to set. Within minutes, the collodion formed a solid layer over his eyelids, securing them tightly. "Try open them," I said. He attempted but failed. Dr. Marshall entered with a bowl of dough, the standard white dough used for baking bread, which was pleasantly soft. I took a piece of the dough and pressed it into one of the Indian's eye sockets, ensuring it spilled over onto the surrounding skin while firmly pressing down the edges. I repeated this process with the other eye. "Is that uncomfortable at all?" I asked. "No," the Indian replied. "It's fine. You handle the wrapping." I told Dr. Marshall, "My fingers are too sticky." "Gladly," Dr. Marshall replied. He took a thick wad of cotton wool and placed it over the Indian's dough-filled eyes. The cotton wool adhered to the dough and stayed put. "Please sit up," Dr. Marshall instructed. The Indian sat up on the bed while Dr. Marshall grabbed a roll of 3-inch bandage, wrapping it around the man's head. The bandage secured the cotton wool and dough firmly. After pinning the bandage in place, Dr. Marshall took a second roll and began to wrap it around not just the man's eyes, but his entire face and head. "Please ensure my nose remains unobstructed for breathing," the Indian requested. "Certainly," Dr. Marshall affirmed, completing the task, and secured the end of the bandage. "How's that?" he inquired. "Splendid," I replied. It was impossible for him to see through it. The entirety of the Indian's head was now shrouded in a thick white bandage, with only the tip of his nose visible. He resembled someone who had just undergone a severe brain surgery. "How does that feel?" "Doctor," Marshall asked him. "It feels good," the Indian replied. "I must commend you gentlemen for such an excellent job." "Off you go then." "Doctor," Marshall said, grinning at me, "show us how clever you are with your words now." The Indian got off the bed and made a straight line for the door. He opened it and stepped outside. "Great Scott," I exclaimed. "Did you see that?" He actually placed his hand on the doorknob. "Doctor," Marshall's grin vanished and his face turned pale. "I'm going after him," he said, dashing for the door. I followed him quickly. The Indian moved at a normal pace down the hospital corridor, with Doctor, Marshall, and me trailing about 5 yards behind him. It was eerie watching this man with the enormous, completely bandaged head, strolling nonchalantly down the hall like anyone else. The surreality was heightened by the knowledge that his eyelids were sealed, his eye sockets filled with gauze and cotton wool and bandages layered on top. I noticed a native orderly approaching, pushing a food trolley. Suddenly, the orderly locked eyes with the bandaged man and froze. The Indian casually sidestepped the trolley and continued on. He saw it. I shouted. He must have seen that trolley. He walked right around it. This was utterly unbelievable. Doctor, Marshall remained silent, his cheeks pale, his expression frozen in shock and disbelief. The Indian reached the stairs and began descending them effortlessly, not even grasping the handrail. Several individuals were climbing the stairs, each halting, gasping, staring, and hurriedly stepping aside for him. At the bottom, the Indian turned right and headed for the doors leading to the street. Doctor, Marshall, and I kept close on his heels. The entrance to our hospital was set back slightly from the street and featured an impressive set of steps leading down into a small courtyard surrounded by acacia trees. As Dr. Marshall and I emerged into the bright sunlight, we stood at the top of the steps, where below us we spotted a crowd of 100 gathered, with at least 50 of them being barefoot children. As our white-haired Indian descended the steps, they erupted in cheers and rushed toward him. He acknowledged the enthusiastic gathering by raising both hands above his head. In that moment, I noticed a bicycle positioned to the side at the bottom of the steps, with a small boy clutching it. The bike was quite ordinary, but affixed to the rear wheel frame was an enormous placard, about 5 feet square, displaying the following message: Imrat Khan, the man who sees without his eyes. Today my eyes have been bandaged by hospital doctors. Appearing tonight and throughout the week at the Royal Palace Hall, Acacia Street, at 7 p.m. Don't miss it. You will witness miracles. Having reached the bottom of the steps, our Indian approached the bicycle and exchanged words with the boy, who beamed at him. The Indian then mounted the bicycle, and the crowd parted to allow him passage. Astonishingly, this man, with his eyes completely bandaged, proceeded to ride across the courtyard and ventured directly into the bustling, honking traffic beyond. The cheering intensified as the barefoot children chased after him, squealing and laughing. For a brief moment, we kept him in view, watching him skillfully navigate the busy street, while cars zipped by, and the children followed in his wake. Soon enough, he turned a corner and disappeared. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Doctor, Marshall remarked, "I can't comprehend it." I insisted, "We must accept it." There was no way he could have removed the bandages. We hadn't averted our gaze from him. Unsealing his eyelids would take him at least 5 minutes with cotton and alcohol. "Doctor," Marshall then said, "I believe we've witnessed a miracle." We began to make our way back into the hospital, and I spent the rest of the day occupied with patients. By 6 p.m., my shift ended, and I returned to my flat for a shower and a change of clothes. This time of year in Bombay was the hottest, and even after darkness fell, the heat felt relentless, akin to an open furnace. Remaining still in a chair caused sweat to ooze from the skin, leaving faces glistening with moisture throughout the day, while shirts clung uncomfortably to sweaty chests. I indulged in a lengthy, cool shower and enjoyed a whiskey and soda while sitting on a veranda draped only in a towel. After freshening up with clean garments, I arrived outside the Royal Palace Hall on Acacia Street at 10 minutes to 7. It was an impressive venue. It resembled one of those modest-sized halls that can be rented affordably for events or gatherings. A sizable group of local Indians congregated near the ticket booth, while a prominent poster hung above the entrance announcing that the International Theater Company was showcasing performances every night that week. The poster boasted jugglers, magicians, acrobats, sword swallowers, fire eaters, and snake charmers, along with a one-act play titled The Raja and the Tiger Lady. However, in the boldest letters, it highlighted Imrat Khan, the miracle man who sees without his eyes. I bought a ticket and entered the venue. The performance lasted 2 hours, and to my surprise, I found it thoroughly enjoyable. All the artists were outstanding. I was particularly impressed by the juggler who handled cooking utensils. She had a saucepan, frying pan, baking tray, substantial plate, and casserole pot all soaring through the air simultaneously. The snake charmer showcased a large green snake that stood almost upright on its tail, moving rhythmically to the tunes of his flute. The fire eater performed with flames, while the sword swallower inserted a slender, pointed rapier at least 4 feet down his throat into his stomach. Finally, amidst a grand flourish of trumpets, our acquaintance Imrat Khan took the stage to present his act. The bandages we had applied at the hospital had been taken off. Audience members were invited onto the stage to blindfold him using sheets, scarves, and turbans. In the end, there was so much fabric wrapped around his head that he struggled to maintain his balance. He was then handed a revolver, and a small boy approached. I stepped out and positioned myself to the left of the stage, recognizing him as the individual who had been outside the hospital with the bicycle that morning. The boy placed a tin can atop his head and stood completely still, creating a heavy silence in the audience as Imrat Khan took aim. When he fired, the loud bang startled everyone and sent the tin can flying from the boy's head, landing with a clatter on the floor. The boy retrieved it and displayed the bullet hole to the audience, prompting cheers and applause as he beamed with pride. Next, he stood against a wooden backdrop, while Imrat Khan hurled knives all around him, most coming dangerously close. This was truly a remarkable display. Few could throw knives with such precision, even when not blindfolded. Yet, here was this remarkable man, his head enveloped in sheets that made it appear as if a giant snowball was perched atop a stick, expertly sending sharp knives toward the screen, mere inches from the boy's head. Throughout the performance, the boy maintained his smile, and once it concluded, the crowd erupted in enthusiastic applause, stamping their feet in delight. Imrat Khan's final act, though less extravagant, was even more astounding. A metal barrel was wheeled onto the stage, and the audience was encouraged to inspect it for any defects. They found none. The barrel was then lowered onto the bandaged head of Imrat Khan, resting down to his shoulders and pinning his arms to his sides, though he was able to extend his forearms and hands. Someone placed a needle in one hand and a length of cotton thread in the other, and with remarkable finesse, he threaded the cotton through the needle's eye. I was left utterly astonished. Once the performance was done, I made my way backstage and discovered Mr. Imrat Khan in a tidy, modest dressing room, quietly seated on a wooden stool. The young Indian boy was methodically removing the many scarves and sheets from around his head. "Ah," he said, "it's my friend, the doctor from the hospital." "Come in, sir, come in." I watched the show. I said, "And what did you think?" "I really enjoyed it. I thought you were incredible." I responded. "Thank you," he replied. "That is a significant compliment. I must also commend your assistant." I gestured toward the small boy. "He is very courageous," the Indian explained. "He doesn't speak English, but I will convey your words to him." He quickly communicated with the boy in Hindustani, who solemnly nodded but remained silent. "Look," I said, "I did you a small favor this morning. Would you grant me one in return? Would you be willing to join me for dinner?" At that moment, all the wrappings had been removed from his head. He smiled at me and remarked, "I believe you're feeling inquisitive. doctor, am I correct? Feeling quite inquisitive, I replied that I would like to engage in conversation with him once more. I was captivated by the unusually dense growth of black hair around the edges of his ears, which I had never encountered on anyone else. I have never been interrogated by a physician before, he mentioned, but I have no objections. It would be delightful to have dinner with you. Should I wait in the car? Yes, please, he responded. I need to clean up and change out of these soiled garments. I described my vehicle to him and told him I would be waiting outside. He appeared 15 minutes later, dressed in a crisp white cotton robe and the customary sandals on his bare feet. Shortly thereafter, the two of us found ourselves comfortably seated at a small restaurant I frequented, known for serving the finest curry in the city. While I enjoyed beer with my curry, Imran Khan opted for lemonade. I'm not an author, I told him. I am a physician. However, if you narrate your story from the start and elucidate how you acquired this remarkable ability to see without your eyes, I will document it as accurately as I can. Perhaps it could even be published in the British Medical Journal or a reputable magazine. Given my profession as a doctor, not merely some writer aiming to profit from a story, people may take what I say more seriously. This would indeed assist you in gaining recognition, I added, and it would be of great benefit to me as well. Why would you want to do this? He inquired. Simply because I am intensely curious, I replied. That is the sole motivation. Imran Khan took a bite of his curried rice and chewed it slowly before responding, Very well, my friend, I will do it. Fantastic, I exclaimed. Let's head back to my apartment as soon as we conclude our meal, and then we can converse without interruption. We finished dining, and I settled the bill before driving Imran Khan back to my flat. In the living room, I retrieved paper and pencils to take notes. I have a unique shorthand that I use for recording patients' medical histories, which allows me to capture most of what someone relays, provided they don't speak too quickly. I believe I managed to document everything Imran Khan communicated that evening verbatim, and here it is, presented just as he articulated it. I am an Indian, a Hindu, Imran Khan stated, and I was born in Akner in Kashmir State in 195. My family is impoverished, and my father. At the age of 13, I worked as a ticket inspector on the railway. One day, our school hosted an Indian magician, known as Professor Moore. In India, it's customary for all magicians to adopt the title professor, and his tricks were impressive. I was captivated, experiencing what I can only describe as an intense desire to delve into this world of magic for myself. 2 days later, I made a decision to leave home, determined to pursue my newfound idol, Professor Moore. Armed with my entire savings of 14 rupees, and only wearing clothes on male white dhoti and sandals, I set off in 1918 at the age of 13. It turned out that Professor Moore had traveled to Lahore, 200 miles away. Undeterred, I bought a third-class ticket and boarded the train in pursuit of him. Upon arriving in Lahore, I located Professor, who was performing in a low-budget show. I expressed my admiration and offered my services as his assistant, which he accepted. For my efforts, I earned a meager 8 annas a day. The professor taught me the linking rings trick, and my role involved performing this trick outside the theater while enticing passers-by to enter and witness the show for a full 6 weeks. This experience was significantly more enjoyable than attending school. However, I was struck by a disheartening realization. There was no actual magic in Professor Moore's performances, only sleight of hand. As soon as this truth hit me, he ceased to be my hero, and my enthusiasm for the job evaporated. Simultaneously, a compelling desire took root within me. I was eager to discover genuine magic and understand the mysterious power known as yoga. To achieve this, I needed to find a yogi willing to accept me as a disciplined endeavor that would prove challenging, given that true yogis are rare, and they are often deeply religious individuals. If I hoped to succeed in my search for a teacher, I would have to feign piety. In truth, I lacked genuine religious belief and felt I was somewhat deceitful in my motivations. My pursuit of yoga was driven solely by selfish ambitions. I yearned for fame and wealth. This, I knew, was something a true yogi would abhor. In fact, their belief is that any yogi who misuses their abilities faces an untimely and sudden death. A yogi should never showcase his skills in public. His practice must occur solely in complete seclusion and be regarded as a spiritual devotion. Otherwise, he faces dire consequences. I did not accept this notion then, nor do I now. Thus, I embark on my quest for a yogi teacher. I part ways with Professor Moore and travel to a city named Amritsar in Punjab, where I join a touring theater group. I need to earn a living while pursuing this elusive truth. Having already experienced success in amateur theater at school, I spend the next 3 years touring throughout Punjab. By the time I reach the age of 16 and a half, I consistently find myself in leading roles, accumulating significant savings to 000 rupees in total. It is at this pivotal moment that I learn of a man named Banerjee. Allegedly, this Banerjee is one of India's truly remarkable yogis, known for extraordinary abilities, particularly the much-discussed gift of levitation, allowing his entire body to lift off the ground during prayer, hovering 18 inches above the earth. I think to myself, surely this is the individual I must pursue. Immediately, I withdraw my savings to depart from the theater company, heading to Rishikesh, situated along the Ganges River, where it is rumored that Banerjee resides. For 6 months, I search for Banerjee. Where is he? Where can I find him? Yes, I hear he was in Rishikesh, but that was some time ago, and even then, no one had actually seen him. Now he has moved elsewhere. To where? Well, how can anyone truly know? Indeed, how can one keep track of someone as elusive as Banerjee, who leads a life of complete isolation? I concede this is self-evident. I exhaust nearly all my funds attempting to locate this Banerjee, retaining only 35 rupees. Despite this, I remain in Rishikesh, making ends meet by performing basic magic tricks for small gatherings, skills I acquired under Professor Moore's guidance. My sleight of hand is relatively adept. Then, one day, while sitting in a modest hotel in Rishikesh, I overhear a traveler mention Yogi Banerjee. The traveler claims Banerjee now lives alone in an isolated jungle not far from here, though he's uncertain of the exact location. He suggests it may be to the north of the town. He indicated with his finger, which was sufficient for me. So I proceeded to the market to negotiate hiring a tonga, a horse-drawn cart. Just as I was finalizing the arrangement with the driver, a man approached, having overheard our conversation. He expressed that he too was heading in the same direction and asked if he could share the ride and the fare. Naturally, I was pleased with the suggestion, and we set off together, him and I seated in the cart while the driver guided the horse. We traveled along a narrow path that cut through the jungle when something remarkably fortunate occurred. As I chatted with my new companion, I discovered he was a disciple of the esteemed Baraji. He was on his way to visit his guru, so I wasted no time in expressing my desire to become a disciple of the yogi as well. He paused, studying me intently for about 3 minutes before finally responding in a soft voice. No, that's impossible. I thought to myself, very well, we'll see about that, and I asked if it was. It is genuinely said that Banerjee levitates during his prayers. Yes, he affirms, but no one is permitted to witness this phenomenon. No one is allowed to approach Banerjee while he is engaged in prayer. As we continue our journey in the Tonga, we talk extensively about Banerjee, and through careful yet casual inquiry, I managed to learn a few details about him, including the time of day he begins his prayers. Shortly thereafter, the man informs me, I will leave you here. This is where I dismount. I drop him off and feign continuing on my way, but once around the bend, I instruct the driver to halt and wait. Swiftly, I descend and stealthily move back along the road in search of this disciple of Banerjee. He is no longer visible and has vanished into the jungle, but I stand still and listen intently. I detect some rustling in the underbrush. I assure myself it's him, and if it's not, it could be a tiger, yet it is indeed him. I spot him trudging deeper into the thick jungle, where there isn't even a slight path, forcing his way between towering bamboos and dense foliage. I creep along, maintaining a distance of about 100 yards because I fear he might hear me. I can certainly pick up on his movements, Moving silently through such dense vegetation is quite impossible. Whenever I lose sight of him, which occurs most of the time, I track his sounds for nearly half an hour. This tense game of following him continues until, suddenly, the sounds fade entirely. I pause to listen. The jungle is eerily quiet. I am filled with dread, fearing I might have lost him. I advance cautiously, and suddenly, through the thick underbrush, I discover a small clearing with 2 huts in its center. These huts are constructed solely from jungle leaves and branches. My heart races, filled with excitement, because I recognize this is undoubtedly the location of Banerjee, the yogi. The disciple has already vanished, likely entered one of the huts. Given the stillness, I begin to perform a meticulous examination of the surrounding trees, bushes, and other features. Next to the nearest hut, I observe a small water hole, and beside it, a prayer mat which I identify as Banerjee's meditation spot. Not 30 yards away stands a massive tree, a grand spreading baobab. Lush, sturdy branches radiate in a manner that allows for placement of bed upon them, where one could recline and remain unseen from below. That will be my tree. I declare internally, I shall conceal myself in that tree. I wait patiently for Banerjee to emerge for prayers, giving me the opportunity to observe everything. However, the disciple has informed me that the prayer time is scheduled for around 5 or 6 in the evening, meaning I have a considerable wait ahead. Thus, I backtrack through the jungle toward the road and converse with the Tonga driver, explaining that he too must wait. I know I'll need to compensate him extra, but at this moment, excitement overshadows my thoughts about money, rendering it inconsequential. Throughout the sweltering midday heat of the jungle, I linger by the Tonga, enduring the muggy heat of the afternoon. As 5 o'clock approaches, I stealthily navigate back to the jungle, my heart racing so intensely that I feel its vibrations throughout my whole body. I ascend into my tree, conceal among the leaves in a way that permits me to observe while remaining unnoticed. I sit in anticipation, watching for 45 minutes. Indeed, I possess a wristwatch I distinctly recall winning in a raffle, which brings me pride. On its face lies the name of the maker, the Islamia Watch Company from Ludhiana. I diligently track the events, eager to capture every detail of this moment. Perched in the tree, I bide my time until, suddenly, a figure emerges from the hut. The man stands tall and slender, clad in an orange dhoti, balancing a tray with brass pots and incense burners in front of him. He gracefully settles cross-legged on the mat by the waterhole, placing the tray upon the ground with an air of tranquility. His movements are calm and deliberate. He leans forward, scoops a handful of water from the pool, and casts it over his shoulder. He gently waved the incense burner back and forth across his chest. Then he rests his palms down on his knees, pausing to inhale deeply through his nostrils. I witness his face transform, a radiance enveloping his features, a glow illuminating his skin. He remains in that serene state for 14 minutes, utterly still. Observing him, I perceive with clarity the way his body slowly rises from the ground. Gradually, ever so gradually, he elevates while remaining cross-legged, his palms resting downward on his knees. His entire form ascends steadily into the air, and I begin to notice light beneath him as he lifts approximately 12 inches off the ground. He is now 15, 18, 20 inches into the air, and soon reaches at least 2 feet above the prayer mat. I remain completely still in the tree, watching intently, repeatedly reminding myself, pay close attention. There's a man seated gracefully suspended in the air. Do you see him? Yes, I confirm I do see him. But is it not a trick of the mind? Is there not some illusion at play? Am I truly witnessing this, or merely imagining it? Yes, I affirm I am convinced. I fixate on him, marveling for an extended period. Eventually, I observe his body gradually descending toward the earth. I notice it moving softly as it approaches, slowly lowering until his body finally rests back upon the mat. My watch indicates he has been in suspension for precisely 46 minutes. I have noted the time, and afterward, for what seems like an eternity, surpassing 2 hours, he remains completely motionless, akin to a statue, without the faintest hint of movement. To me, it appears he is not breathing. His eyes close, yet his face radiates a peculiar brightness, accompanied by a subtle smiling expression I have never encountered on anyone else's face in my entire life. Then, at last, he begins to move. He shifts his hands, stands, bows down again, retrieves the tray, and slowly makes his way back inside the hut. Overwhelmed and exhilarated, I disregard all caution, hastily descend the tree, and rush straight to the hut, bursting through the door. Banerjee is bent over, washing his hands and feet in the basin, his back to me. However, he senses my presence and quickly turns, straightening up. Astonishment spreads across his face, and his first words are, "How long have you been here?" He states this sharply, clearly not pleased. I promptly recount the entire truth, detailing my experience up in the tree as I observed him, and conclude by expressing my singular desire to become his disciple, asking if he would permit it. In an unexpected outburst, he seems to erupt with fury, his voice rising as he shouts, "Get out!" He continues to yell, "Get out of here! Get out! Get out!" In his rage, he seizes a small brick. He throws it at me, hitting my right leg just below the knee, tearing into the flesh. I still bear the scar and can show it to you. See it there, just beneath the knee. Banerjee's anger is fierce, and I feel a deep fear. I turn and flee, racing back through the jungle to where the Tonga driver waits, and we head home to Rishikesh. That night, however, I gather my courage and make a decision. I will return to the heart of Banerjee every single day, persistently pursuing him until he ultimately has no choice but to accept me as a disciple for his own peace of mind. Thus, each day, I visit him, and with every encounter, his fury erupts upon me like a volcano. He shouts and yells, while I stand there, frightened yet resolute, tirelessly expressing my desire to become his disciple. For 5 days, this continues, until suddenly, on my 6th visit, Banerjee appears calm and courteous. He tells me he cannot personally take me on as a disciple, but he will write a note to a friend of his, a great yogi residing in Haridwar. I am to visit him, where I will receive guidance and instruction. Imrat Khan paused and requested a glass of water. I brought it to him, and after a long, deliberate sip, he resumed his tale. This was in 1922, and I was nearly 17 years old. I traveled to Haridwar, where I discovered the yogi, and with Banerjee's letter, he agreed to provide me with instruction. Now, what does this instruction entail? It is undoubtedly the essential aspect of my quest, the very thing I have been longing for, ensuring that I am an eager student. The initial lessons, the most rudimentary components, require me to perform some of the most challenging physical exercises, all centered on muscle control and breathing. But after a few weeks, even the most enthusiastic pupil can become restless. I express to the yogi, my goal is to enhance my mental capabilities, not just my physical ones. He replies, mastering your body will lead to automatic mastery of your mind. I insist on wanting both simultaneously, and eventually he concedes, fine, I will provide you with exercises to refine your conscious mind. Conscious mind. I inquire, why do you specify conscious mind? He explains that every individual possesses two minds, the conscious and the subconscious. The subconscious mind is intensely focused, while the conscious mind, the one most people engage with, tend to be scattered and unfocused, preoccupied with countless distractions. Focus on the elements present in your surroundings and the thoughts circulating your mind. You must train yourself to hone in so precisely that you can summon the image of a single item at will, blocking out everything else. If you dedicate yourself to this practice, you should be capable of directing your conscious mind towards any chosen object for no less than 3.5 minutes. However, prepare for a journey that may span approximately 15 years. While some may suggest this timeline, it could extend beyond that. They propose 15 years as the average duration, but I might find myself aged by then. Do not lose hope, the yogi advises, as the duration can fluctuate. With various individuals, some may take a decade, while others might require less time, and on exceedingly rare occasions, an exceptional person emerges who can harness this ability in only 1 or 2 years. However, such individuals are incredibly rare. When I inquire about who these extraordinary people are, I learn that they don't possess any apparent differences from others. They could be a modest street cleaner, a factory employee, or even a Raja. There's no way to discern until training commences. Is it genuinely that challenging to focus the mind on one single object for 3.5 minutes? He replies that it approaches the realm of impossibility. He encourages me to give it a try. Close your eyes and contemplate something fixate on just one item. Envision it, and before long, your thoughts will drift, leading to other distractions, and image that truly is a formidable task. Thus spoke the yogi of Hardwar. Consequently, my genuine training begins. Each evening, I sit, close my eyes, and picture the face of the person I cherish the most, me brother. I focus on visualizing his features, but as soon as my thoughts stray, I pause the exercise and rest for several minutes before proceeding. After 3 years of consistent practice, I managed to concentrate solely on my brother's face for 1.5 minutes. While I am making strides, I experience an interesting side effect. I completely lose my sense of smell, which is yet to return. The demands of earning a living for sustenance compel me to leave Hardwar and move to Kolkata, where better opportunities await. There, I quickly start earning a respectable income performing magic shows, yet I consistently dedicate time each evening to my exercises. No matter where I am, I find a tranquil spot to practice concentrating on my brother's face. Occasionally, I opt for something less personal, such as an orange or a pair of glasses, which add an additional layer of challenge. One day, I travel from Kolkata to Dhaka in East Bengal for a magic show at a college. While in Dhaka, I attend a firewalking demonstration. A large audience gathers, seated in droves on the inclined lawn, observing a trench dug at its base. This trench is approximately 25 feet long and filled with logs, wood, charcoal, and a generous amount of lit paraffin, transforming the trench into a glowing, intensely hot furnace. The heat is so extreme that the individuals tending to it are unable to approach without discomfort, required to put on goggles due to strong winds that stir the charcoal nearly to a glowing heat. The Indian fire walker steps forward. He is unclothed except for a small loincloth and his bare feet. An intense quiet envelopes the crowd. The fire walker strides into the trench, traversing its entire length over the intensely heated white coals. He neither pauses nor rushes. He simply walks across the burning embers and emerges at the other end, his feet completely unharmed. He displays the soles of his feet to the astonished audience. Their awe is palpable as he prepares to walk the trench again, this time at an even slower pace. With each step, a look of intense focus etches itself onto his face. In that moment, I think to myself that he has mastered yoga. He is indeed a yogi. After his display, the fire walker invites anyone daring enough to join him for firewalk. A hush falls over the crowd, and I feel a surge of exhilaration in my chest. This is my moment. I must embrace it with faith and courage. For over 3 years, I have engaged in concentration exercises, and now it's time to subject myself to a formidable challenge. While I muse over these thoughts, a volunteer emerges from the audiencia, a young Indian man who declares his readiness to attempt the firewalk. His decision galvanizes me, and I step forward to announce my intention as well. The crowd erupts in cheers for us both. The experienced fire walker assumes the role of supervisor, instructing the other young man to go first. He advises him to remove his loincloth to prevent it from igniting due to the intense heat and to discard his sandals. The young Indian complies, but as he approaches the trench and feels the searing heat, fear overtakes him. He retreats a few steps, shielding his face from the heat with his hands. The true fire walker reassures him, "You don't have to do it if you don't want to." The audience watches in anticipation, sensing the tension. Despite his fear, the young man displays his bravery by declaring, "Of course, I'll do it." With that, he dashes toward the trench, places one foot inside and the other, and lets out a terrified scream as he jumps out, collapsing to the ground. He writhes in agony, the soles of his feet severely burned, and patches of skin have peeled away. 2 of his friends rush to help, carrying him away. "Now it's your turn," the fire walker says to me. "Are you ready?" I say I am prepared, but I ask for silence as I ready myself. A profound stillness envelopes the audience. They've witnessed one individual suffer severe burns. Is this second person truly reckless enough to follow suit? A voice in the crowd yells, "Don't do it! You must be insane." Others join in, urging me to abandon the endeavor. I turn to them and raise my hands, signaling for quiet. The noise subsides and all eyes focus on me. At this moment, an unusual tranquility washes over me. I pull my garment over my head and remove my sandals, standing there in just my underpants. Remaining very still with my eyes closed, I begin to center my thoughts. My focus shifts entirely to the fire. I visualize nothing but the white-hot embers and direct my mindset toward perceiving them as cold. I reassure myself that they cannot harm me, as it's impossible for them to inflict burns when there is no warmth. I let 30 seconds pass, mindful that I cannot linger too long, as my concentration on any one thing typically lasts for only a minute and a half. Deeply immersed, I concentrate so intensely that I enter a trance-like state. I step onto the embers, moving briskly along the trench, and to my astonishment, I remain unscathed. The crowd erupts into wild cheers. The first fire walker rushes over to inspect my feet, unable to fathom the sight. Not a single burn mark adorns them. He exclaims, "What is this? Are you a yogi?" To which I respond with pride, "I am indeed on my way, sir." Following this, I quickly dress and make my exit, intentionally steering clear of the crowd. Excitement courses through me. I acknowledge that the power is beginning to manifest. Throughout, I reflect on the wisdom imparted by the old yogi of Hardwire, who stated that certain sacred individuals attain such concentration that they can see without their eyes. This thought lingers in my mind, fueling my desire to possess that ability. After my triumph with fire walking, I resolved to dedicate all my efforts toward the singular goal of seeing without the eyes. For only the second occasion thus far, Imrat Khan paused his narrative, took another sip of water, and leaned back in his chair, shutting his eyes. "I'm striving to organize everything in the right sequence," he mentioned. "I don't want to omit any details." "You're doing great." I encourage him. "Please continue." "Very well," he replied. "I remain in Kolkata, and I have achieved success in fire walking, and now I am focused entirely on a singular goal, to perceive without using my eyes. It is time to implement a subtle alteration in my nightly exercises. I start by lighting a candle and fix my gaze on the flame. The flame consists of 3 distinct sections, the yellow at the top, the mauve below, and the black at its core. I position the candle 16 inches from my face, ensuring the flame is perfectly aligned with my eyes. It must not be above or below, as this prevents any minute adjustments in my muscles from looking up or down. I settle in comfortably and direct my attention to the black center of the flame. This process helps me focus my conscious mind and clear it of my surroundings. I focus intently on the black spot until everything else fades away, leaving nothing in my view. Gradually, I close my eyes and concentrate on a single object of my choosing, which is typically the face of my brother. I engage in this practice every night before sleep, and by 1929, at the age of 24, I am capable of focusing on an object for 3 minutes without my mind wandering. At this point, I begin to notice a slight capability to visualize an object with my eyes shut. It is a gentle sensation, a peculiar feeling that, by shutting my eyes and concentrating intensely, I can perceive the outline of the object before me. I am gradually nurturing my inner sight. If you wonder what I mean by this, I will clarify it as the yogi from Hardwire explained it to me. Each of us possesses 2 forms of sight, similar to how we have dual senses of smell, taste, and hearing. There is the outer sense, which is highly refined and commonly used, and then there's the inner sense. If we could nurture these inner sensations, we could smell without our noses, taste without our tongues, hear without our ears, and see without our eyes. Do you grasp this concept? Our noses, tongues, ears, and eyes serve merely as tools that help transmit sensations to the brain. Thus, I constantly work to hone my inner sight. Each night, I continue my routine exercises with the candle flame and my brother's face, after which I take a moment to relax. For a short period, I sip on a cup of coffee before blindfolding myself and settling in my chair. I strive to visualize, not merely to imagine, but to genuinely perceive every object in the space around me without relying on my sight. Gradually, I find some success. Soon, I am working with a deck of cards, pulling one from the top and holding it up in reverse, attempting to see through it. With a pencil in hand, I jot down my guess of its identity. I repeat this process with another card, continuing through the entire deck. At the end of this exercise, I compare my notes with the cards next to me. Almost immediately, my accuracy is between 60 to 70%. I engage in additional activities, acquiring maps and intricate navigational charts that I hang around my room. I spend countless hours staring at them while blindfolded, attempting to perceive them, trying to decipher the small font of the place names and rivers. Each evening over the next 4 years, I commit to this practice. By 1933, just last year, at the age of 28, I find that I can read a book while completely covering my eyes. Finally, I possess this ability for certain, and without hesitation, I incorporate the blindfold routine into my regular magic performances. The crowd appreciates a performance, cheering enthusiastically, yet not a single individual perceives it as authentic. Everyone is convinced that it is merely another sophisticated illusion, and my identity as a magician heightens their skepticism. Magicians are known for their ability to deceive, making it difficult for anyone to accept my abilities, as real even the doctors who expertly blindfold me doubt that someone could see without their eyes. They overlook the possibility of alternative methods for transmitting images to the brain. I inquire about those methods, and he candidly admitted that he isn't entirely sure how I can perceive without my eyes. However, what he does understand is that when my eyes are covered, they are not involved in the process of seeing at all. The vision is facilitated by another part of my body. I queried which part it could be, and he responded that it could be any part as long as the skin is exposed. For instance, if a metal sheet blocks my view of a book, I won't be able to read it. Yet, if allowed to place my hand around the sheet so that my hand can observe the book, I would be able to read it. Would you mind if I put you to the test? I asked. Not in the least, he replied. I mentioned that I didn't possess a metal sheet, but the door would suffice. Rising from my seat, I approached the bookshelf and selected the first book I could find, which happened to be Alice in Wonderland. I opened the door and asked my guest to stand behind it out of direct sight. Opening the book at a random page, I propped it on a chair on the opposite side of the door from him, and then positioned myself such that I could see both him and the book. "Can you read that book?" I queried. "No," he responded. "Of course not." "All right, you may now reach your hand around the door, but only your hand." He extended his hand around the edge of the door until it was visible in front of the book. I noticed his fingers begin to spread apart, quivering slightly, as if they were the antennae of an insect, and his hand rotated so that the back faced the book. "Try reading the left page from the top," I instructed. After a moment of silence that lasted around 10 seconds, he began to read smoothly without hesitation. "Have you guessed the riddle yet?" the Hatter asked Alice once more. "No, I give up," Alice responded. "What's the answer?" "I haven't the slightest idea," replied the Hatter. "Nor I," added the Hare. Alice sighed with fatigue, expressing that perhaps there were more productive uses of time than wasting it with riddles. "No responses. It's flawless," I cried. "Now I truly believe in you. You are a marvel." My excitement was overwhelming. "Thank you, Doctor." He replied seriously. "What you say brings me immense joy." I posed a question. "Regarding the playing cards, when you displayed the back of one, did you grasp the other side to assist in reading it?" "You are very observant," he responded. "But no, I did not. For those cards, I could somehow see through them." "How do you account for that?" I inquired. "I don't explain it," he stated, "other than perhaps that a card is so delicate. It is thin and not substantial like metal or hefty like a door. That is the only explanation I can provide. There are numerous phenomena in this world, Doctor, that elude our understanding. Indeed, I affirmed. There definitely are. Would you be so gracious as to drive me home now? He said. I feel quite fatigued. That night, I took him home in my vehicle. I couldn't sleep afterward, too energized by what I had just witnessed. This man could have doctors globally ecstatic. He could alter the entire direction of medicine. From a medical standpoint, he must be the most precious individual alive. We physicians need to secure him and ensure his safety. We must care for him and prevent him from disappearing. Understanding precisely how an image can reach the brain without the eyes can enable the blind to see and the deaf to hear. Most importantly, this extraordinary man must not be neglected, wandering through India in budget accommodations and performing in subpar theaters. Fueled by my thoughts, I eventually grabbed a notebook and a pen, meticulously jotting down everything Irrfan Khan had shared with me that evening. Using the notes I had taken during our conversation, I wrote for 5 uninterrupted hours. By 8 o'clock the following morning, when it was time to head to the hospital, I had completed the most crucial sections of pages you've just read. That morning at the hospital, I didn't encounter Dr. Marshall until we crossed paths in the doctor's lounge during our break. I relayed as much as I could in the 10 minutes we had available. I'm returning to the theater tonight, I stated. I need to talk to him again and convince him to remain here. We cannot lose him now. I'll accompany you, Doctor. Marshall agreed. All right. I replied, we'll watch the performance first, and then we'll treat him to dinner. At 6:45 that evening, I drove Dr. Marshall to Asia Road, parked the vehicle, and we made our way to the Royal Palace Hall. Something's not right, I noted as I surveyed the scene. There was a lack of crowd presence outside the hall, and the doors remained shut. The promotional poster for the event was still visible, but I noticed a significant alteration. Someone had boldly scrawled in black pen across it, declaring, "Tonight's performance canceled." An elderly gatekeeper stood near the locked entrance. What happened? I inquired. Someone passed away, he replied. Who? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. The man who sees without his eyes, the gatekeeper said. How did he die? I cried. Where? They say he passed in his bed. The gatekeeper responded. He went asleep and never awoke. Such things occur. As we trudged back to the car, I was overcome with a profound sense of sorrow and fury. I should never have let that remarkable man go home last night. I ought to have kept him with me, offered him my bed, and looked after him. I shouldn't have allowed him out of my sight. Imrat Khan was a miracle worker. He had connected with enigmatic and perilous forces that were inaccessible to average individuals. He had broken every rule, performed his wonders publicly, accepted payment for it, and worst of all, shared some secrets with me, an outsider. Now he was gone. Well, that's that, Doctor, Marshall remarked. Yes, I responded. It's all finished. No one will ever know how he achieved it. This is a comprehensive account of everything related to my 2 encounters with Imrat Khan, signed John F. Cartwright, M.D., Bombay, December 4th, 1934. Well, ponder Henry Sugar. Now, that's exceedingly intriguing. He closed the exercise book and stared out at the rain drumming against the library windows. Henry Sugar continued to speak to himself. This is a phenomenal piece of information. It could transform my life. The information he referred to was that Imrat Khan had learned to read the value of a playing card from its back. Henry, the gambler with dubious morals, immediately realized that if he could acquire the same skill, he could amass a fortune. For a moment, Henry envisioned the incredible possibilities that would unfold if he could read cards from the reverse. He would win unceasingly at canasta, bridge, and poker. Even better, he could step into any casino globally and triumph at blackjack and all the high-stakes card games they offered. Understood that nearly everything ultimately relied on the outcome of one single card, and if he could determine its value ahead of time, success was assured. But the question loomed, could he genuinely condition himself to achieve this skill? There seemed to be no reason it was impossible. The exercise involving the candle flame didn't look overly demanding, And according to the book, that was essentially the entire process. It entailed merely gazing into the heart of the flame while focusing on the visage of his beloved. Mastering it might take him several years, yet who wouldn't be willing to invest a few years to consistently triumph over casinos? "I'm going to make it happen," he declared vocally. He remained motionless in the armchair within the library, devising a strategic approach. First and foremost, he would keep his intentions concealed from everyone. He'd take the small book from the library to prevent any of his friends from accidentally discovering it and uncovering the secret. The book would accompany him everywhere, becoming his guiding doctrine. Finding a real yogi for instruction wasn't feasible, so he resolved that the book would serve as his yogi, his mentor. Henry rose and tucked the slender blue workbook beneath his jacket. He exited the library and headed directly to the bedroom assigned to him for the weekend. After retrieving his suitcase, he discreetly concealed the book beneath his garments. He then made his way downstairs to the butler's pantry. "John," he called to the butler, "could you procure a candle for me?" "Just a plain white one." Butlers are trained to refrain from questioning. They simply follow commands. "Would you like a candle holder as well, sir?" "Yes, a candle and a holder," he responded. "Very well, sir. Shall I deliver them to your room?" "No, I'll wait here until you find them." The butler quickly located a candle along with a holder. Henry then inquired, "Now, could you also fetch me a ruler?" The butler promptly provided a ruler, and Henry expressed his gratitude before returning to his bedroom. Once inside, he locked the door and drew the curtains, creating a twilight atmosphere. He set the candle holder with the candle upon the dressing table and positioned a chair. Seating himself, he was pleased to notice that his eyes were perfectly aligned with the candle's wick. Utilizing the ruler, he adjusted his face to 16 inches from the flame, as specified in the book. The Indian man had conjured an image of the person he cherished most, which, in his case, was a brother. Since Henry did not have a brother, he opted to visualize his own face instead. This was a wise decision. As for someone as self-absorbed as Henry, his own face was quite likely the one he loved the most. Furthermore, it was the face he was most familiar with, having spent countless hours examining it in the mirror. He was well acquainted with every contour and line. Using his cigarette lighter, he ignited the wick, and a steady yellow flame emerged. Henry remained motionless, gazing into the candle's flame. The book he had read was accurate. Upon closer inspection, the flame displayed 3 distinct sections: the yellow exterior, a mauve inner layer, and at the center lay a diminutive area of pure blackness. He concentrated on the small black spot, directing his focus toward it. As he did, something remarkable occurred. His mind went completely blank, and the restlessness of his thoughts ceased. Suddenly, it felt as if he himself, body and all, were snugly encased within the flame, comforted by the little black abyss. Without any difficulty, Henry permitted his own face to materialize before him, concentrating solely on that singular image while dismissing all other thoughts. He succeeded entirely in this endeavor, albeit only for about 15 seconds. After that brief period, his mind began to wander, leading him to think about gambling casinos and the potential winnings awaiting him. At that moment, he diverted his gaze from the candle and took a break. This was his first attempt, and he felt exhilarated by what he had accomplished. Admittedly, he hadn't maintained his focus for long, but then again, the Indian fellow hadn't fared any better on his initial try. After a few minutes, he attempted again, experiencing a more extended concentration period without a stopwatch to measure it. He felt it was certainly longer than the first. "This is amazing," he exclaimed. "I'm going to succeed. I will do it." He had never felt such excitement in his life. From that day forward, irrespective of his location or activities, Henry committed to practicing with the candle every morning and evening, often including midday sessions as well. For the first time, he was immersing himself in an activity with genuine passion, and the progress was notable. Within 6 months, he could focus entirely on his own face for at least 3 uninterrupted minutes, devoid of any external distractions. Entering his thoughts, The yogi of Hardwire informed the Indian gentleman that achieving such results required a commitment of 15 years. However, the yogi had also mentioned another point. Henry, eagerly consulting his small blue exercise book for the 100th time, recalled that it stated that, on extraordinarily rare occasions, an exceptional individual might cultivate such abilities in just 1 or 2 years. "That's me," Henry exclaimed. "I must be that 1 in a million person who can harness yoga powers at an astonishing rate. Hooray! Soon, I'll be cleaning out every casino across Europe and America." Despite this excitement, Henry displayed remarkable patience and discernment. He refrained from immediately pulling out a deck of cards to test his perceptions, keeping a distance from all card games. He had stopped playing bridge, canasta, and poker the moment he began his work with the candle. What's more, he had also opted out of socializing at parties and weekend gatherings with affluent friends. His sole focus became the pursuit of yoga powers, putting all else on hold until he achieved that goal. Sometime in the 10th month, Henry experienced a subtle ability akin to what Irit Khan had experienced, allowing him to visualize an object with his eyes shut. When he closed his eyes and focused intensely on an object, he could genuinely see its outline. "It's happening!" he shouted. "I'm succeeding! It's incredible!" Now, he dedicated himself even more rigorously to his candle exercises. By the end of the first year, he could concentrate on the image of his own face for a remarkable 5.5 minutes. Convinced it was time to challenge himself with cards, he made this decision in his London flat around midnight. Trembling with anticipation, he retrieved a pack of cards along with a pencil and paper. He placed the deck face down before him and concentrated on the top card. Initially, he perceived only the pattern on the card's back as a simple design of thin red lines, one of the most common playing card designs imaginable. He then redirected his focus from the design to the unseen side of the card. Immersed in concentration, he forbade any distracting thoughts from entering his mind. 30 seconds passed, then 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Henry remained motionless, his focus unwavering and complete as he visualized the reverse side of the card. The sole focus in his mind was on the playing card, and during the 4th minute, something began to shift slowly but distinctly. The black shapes transformed into spades, and beside them emerged the number 5, the 5 of spades. Henry turned off his focus momentarily and, with trembling fingers, he picked up the card and flipped it over. It was indeed the 5 of spades. "I've accomplished it," he exclaimed, springing from his chair. "I've seen through it. I'm on my path." After taking a brief pause, he attempted again, this time timing himself with a stopwatch. After 3 minutes and 58 seconds, he identified the card as the King of Diamonds. He was correct. The next attempt yielded another success in 3 minutes and 54 seconds, 4 seconds faster. Overwhelmed with excitement and fatigue, he decided that was enough for the day. He rose, poured himself a large drink of whiskey, and settled down to reflect on his achievement. He assured himself that his new mission was continual practice with the cards until he could instantly discern them. He was confident it was attainable. After all, he had already reduced his time by 4 seconds on his second attempt. He resolved to abandon the candle and dedicate his efforts solely to the cards. He committed to incessant practice, day and night, and that's exactly what he did. However, as the prospect of real success loomed, his obsession intensified. He hardly ventured out his apartment except for food and drink, spending all day and often long into the night bent over the cards, stopwatch at his side, aiming to shorten the time taken to read them from the back. Within a month, he improved to 1.5 minutes, and after 6 months of intense focus, he managed to do it in 20 seconds. But that duration still felt excessive for casino gambling, where the dealer awaited his prompt decision. 3 or 4 seconds would suffice, but anything beyond that wasn't acceptable. Henry persisted, though it grew increasingly challenging to enhance his speed. Dropping from 20 seconds to 19 required a week of strenuous effort. Cutting back from 19 to 18 demanded almost 2 weeks. 7 more months passed before he could see through a card in 10 seconds flat. He set his sights on 4 seconds, well aware that achieving this speed was crucial for successful casino play. Yet, the closer he approached his goal, the more challenging it became to attain. It took him 4 weeks to make progress. Reduce his time from 10 seconds to 9, and it would take him an additional 5 weeks to decrease it from 9 to 8. However, at this point, the effort no longer troubled him. His focus had sharpened to such an extent that he could work for 12 hours continuously without any difficulty, and he firmly believed he would achieve his goal in the end. He refused to quit until he succeeded. Day after day, night after night, he hunched over the cards with his stopwatch beside him, battling fiercely to shave off those last few stubborn seconds. The final 3 seconds proved to be the most challenging. Taking his time from 7 seconds to his goal of 4 required precisely 11 months. The pivotal moment arrived on a Saturday evening. With a card facing down on the table in front of him, he pressed the stopwatch and immediately began to concentrate. At once, he perceived a red blur that quickly transitioned into a diamond, and within moments, a figure 6 appeared in the top left corner. He pressed the stopwatch again and checked the time. It was 4 seconds. Turning the card over revealed the 6 of diamonds. He had accomplished it. He read it in exactly 4 seconds. He attempted again with another card and identified it as the Queen of Spades. He continued through the deck, timing himself with each card for seconds, for seconds, for seconds. The result was consistently the same. He had finally done it. It was all complete, and he was prepared to proceed. How long had this taken him? The total was precisely 3 years and 3 months of focused effort, and now it was time for the casinos. When should he begin? Why not tonight? It was Saturday, and the casinos would be bustling. The crowd would lessen the likelihood of drawing attention. He entered his bedroom to put on his dinner jacket and black tie. Saturday called for a stylish appearance at the Grand London casinos. He decided to head to Lord's house. There are over 100 legitimate casinos in London, but entry is restricted to members only, so one must obtain membership before entering. Henry was a member of at least 10 of them, with Lord's house being his favorite, as it was the most prestigious and exclusive in the nation. Lord's house, a splendid Georgian mansion in central London, had served as the private residence of a duke for over 200 years. It was now occupied by bookmakers, with the stunning high-ceilinged rooms that once hosted the aristocracy and even royalty for games of whist, now filled with a different type of clientele who engaged in a very different kind of play. Of the game, Henry drove to Lord's residence and parked outside the grand entrance. He stepped out of the vehicle, leaving the engine running as an attendant in a green uniform approached to park it for him. Lining the curb on both sides of the street were around a dozen Rolls-Royces, each belonging to the affluent patrons of Lord's establishment. "Hello, Mr. Sugar," greeted the man at the desk, whose job ensured he never overlooked a face. "We haven't seen you in years." "I've been occupied," Henry replied as he proceeded up the impressive wide staircase with its intricate mahogany railings and entered the cashier's office. There, he wrote a check for £1,000, receiving 10 large pink rectangular chips in return, each valued at £100. He tucked them into his pocket, spending a few moments wandering through the various gaming rooms to reacquaint himself after such a lengthy hiatus. The crowd was sizable tonight. Well-fed women clustered around a roulette table like plump hens at a feeding trough, adorned with jewels and gold that cascaded over their bosoms and wrists. Many sported blue hair, while the men donned dinner jackets, all notably short in stature. It puzzled Henry why the specific breed of affluent man often had such short legs. Their limbs seemed truncated at the knees, lacking thighs above. Most carried prominent bellies and had flushed faces, cigars clamped between their lips, their eyes glistening with avarice. Henry observed these details with newfound distaste. Marking the first occasion, he viewed this type of wealthy casino patron as unrefined. Previously, he had regarded them as peers, members of his own social class. Tonight, they appeared crass. Could it be that the yoga practices he had embraced over the past 3 years had shifted his perspective? He stood, watching the roulette on the expansive green table as patrons placed their bets, attempting to predict where the small white ball would land on the next spin. As he gazed at the wheel, Perhaps driven more by instinct than intention, he found himself concentrating on it. This focus was not challenging. He had honed the skill of total concentration to the point where it had turned into a habit. In an instant, his mind narrowed its focus entirely on the wheel, erasing every distraction, the noise, the people, the lights, the scent of cigar smoke, leaving him with only the white numbers encircling the rim. The numbers ran from 1 to 36, with a 0 position between them. Rapidly, all the numbers faded from view except for one. 18 was the sole number visible to him at first. It appeared a bit hazy and unfocused. Gradually, the edges became more distinct and its brightness intensified until it seemed to radiate, almost as if illuminated from behind. It expanded and appeared to leap toward him. At that moment, Henry released his concentration, and the room came back into view. "Have you finished?" the croupier asked. Henry retrieved a 100 plaque from his pocket and placed it on the square designated 18 on the green felt table. Despite the table being cluttered with other patrons' bets, his was the lone wager on 18. The croupier spun the wheel, and the small white ball bounced and raced around the edge. All eyes fixated on the ball as the wheel gradually slowed down. It came to a halt. The ball wobbled a few times, paused, then settled into slot 18. 18, called the croupier, and the crowd collectively sighed. The croupier's assistant gathered the heaps of losing plaques with a long-handled wooden scoop, but he overlooked Henry's. They paid him 36 to 1 for his 100, resulting in £3,600, which he received in 3 1,000-pound plaques and £600 in lower denominations. Henry began to experience an overwhelming sense of power. He felt capable of demolishing this establishment if he so desired. He could extract $1 million from them, and the stern, polished men observing the cash flow would be scurrying like frightened rodents. Should he proceed with such a plan? The temptation loomed large, yet would undoubtedly lead to his downfall. He would gain notoriety and be barred from every casino worldwide. He had to resist and exercise caution to avoid attracting attention. Henry sauntered out of the roulette area and entered the room where blackjack was being played. He lingered in the doorway, observing the gameplay. For tables were present, each uniquely shaped, curving like crescent moons with players seated on high stools around the perimeter of the half circle, while dealers stood inside. At Lord's house, they utilized 4 shuffled decks housed in an open-ended box known as a shoe, from which the dealer would draw each card individually, showing the back of the card as it emerged. Blackjack, commonly referred to by a few other names like Pontoon, 21, or Vant, is a straightforward game. The objective for players is to accumulate card values as close to 21 as they can without exceeding it. Going over 21 results in a bust, and the dealer claims a wager. In almost every hand, players face the dilemma of whether to draw another card, risking busting or not. Determining whether to remain with his current hand wasn't an issue for Henry, as he would have effortlessly assessed the card offered by the dealer in a mere 4 seconds, enabling him to decide to accept or decline it. Henry had a unique ability to turn blackjack into a spectacle. Unlike the casinos where an odd regulation prevails regarding betting, at home we inspect our initial card before placing any wager. If it's favorable, we raise our bets. The casinos, however, require all players to place their bets prior to the reveal of the initial card for each hand. In addition, players can't later increase their wager by purchasing another card. Yet, Henry remained unfazed by these rules, especially as long as he occupied the seat directly to the left of the dealer. This positioning ensured that he would always be the first to receive a card from the shoe at the start of each round. With calmness, Henry stood just inside the doorway, seeking an open seat on the dealer's left at one of the 4 tables. After a 20-minute wait, he achieved his goal, settling onto a tall stool and presenting the dealer with one of the 1,000-pound plaques he had secured from roulette. "All in 25s, please," he instructed. The dealer was a younger man with raven-black eyes and a pallid complexion, rarely smiling, and only speaking when absolutely required. His fingers were notably slender, displaying a talent for calculation. He accepted Henry's plaque and placed it into a slot on the table, where an assortment of multicolored circular chips lay arranged in a wooden tray in front of him, each worth 25 pounds, 10 pounds, and 5 pounds, with perhaps 100 of each denomination. With deft precision, the dealer grabbed a stack of 25 chips, assembling them into a tall pile on the table without needing to count. He was well aware that the stack contained precisely 20 chips. His agile fingers could accurately select any quantity of chips from 1 to 20 without error. The dealer then lifted a second grouping of chips, bringing the total to 40, and slid them toward Henry. As Henry organized the chips before him, he cast a glance at the top card in the shoe, activating his focus and interpreting it as a 10 within 4 seconds. He then placed 8 of his chips forward, totaling 200 pounds, the highest wager permitted for blackjack at Lord's house. He received a 10 and a 9, resulting in a total of 19. Conventional wisdom dictates that one should refrain from hitting on a total of 19, so Henry opted to hold tight, hoping the dealer wouldn't achieve a 20 or 21. When it was Henry's turn again, he announced 19 and chose to pass. To the next player, wait, Henry, said the dealer. Paused before returning to Henry. He arched his eyebrows and regarded him with those cool black eyes. Do you wish to draw to 19? He inquired. With a hint of sarcasm, his Italian accent laced his words. Infused with both disdain and irony there were only 2 cards in the deck that could avoid busting a 19, the ace valued at 1, and the 2 it would be foolish to draw for 19, particularly with 200 pounds on the line. The next card to be dealt was clearly visible at the forefront of the shoe. At least its back was clearly exposed. The dealer had not yet touched it. Yes, Henry responded. I believe I'll take another card. The dealer shrugged and revealed the card from the shoe. The 2 of clubs landed perfectly in front of Henry next to the 10 and the 9. Thank you, Henry stated. That will suffice. 21, the dealer remarked. His black eyes briefly met Henry's face and remained there silently observant and perplexed. Henry had disrupted his equilibrium. He had never before seen anyone draw on 19. This man had drawn on 19 with an ease and certainty that was truly astonishing, and had succeeded. Henry perceived a look in the dealer's eyes and immediately understood that he had made a foolish error. He had been overly clever, attracting attention. To himself, he must never repeat that he needed to be cautious in how he leveraged his abilities. He must even allow himself to lose now and then, and periodically engage in a few reckless moves. The game, continued. Henry's edge was so significant, he struggled to keep his winnings manageable. Occasionally, he would request a third card despite knowing it would lead to a loss. On one particular occasion, upon seeing that his initial card was an ace, he placed his smallest wager and dramatically lamented his failure to make a larger bet from the start. Within an hour, he had amassed exactly 3,000 pounds, and there he chose a halt. He gathered his chips and proceeded to the cashier's office to exchange them for actual cash. His earnings comprised 3,000 pounds from blackjack and 3,600 pounds from roulette, totaling 6,600 pounds. In fact, he convinced himself that this amount could have easily reached 660,000 pounds. He believed he was likely capable of generating income more swiftly than anyone else globally. The cashier accepted Henry's stack of chips without any visible reaction. Donning steel spectacles, his pale eyes showed no regard for Henry, focusing solely on the chips before him. This man possessed a talent for calculations, but his skills extended beyond simple math to encompass trigonometry, calculus, algebra, and Euclidean geometry coursing through every nerve. He functioned as a human calculator, operating with 100,000 electrical connections firing in his brain. In merely 5 seconds, he counted Henry's 120 chips. Would you like a check for this, Mr. Sugar? He inquired. As the cashier at the front desk recognized every customer by name, Henry replied, No, thank you. I'll take it in cash. As you wish, came the response from behind the spectacles, as he turned away to access a safe at the back of the office, presumably holding millions. By the standards of Lord's house, Henry's victory was relatively minor. The Arab oil tycoons had arrived in London, eager to wager, along with dubious diplomats from the Far East, Japanese businessmen, and British taxicab operators. Enormous sums of money were exchanged, mainly lost, in the grand casinos of London daily. The cashier returned with Henry's cash, placing the bundle of notes on the counter. Although the amount could purchase a small house or a large vehicle, The chief cashier remained unfazed, treating the transaction with the same indifference as if handing over a pack of gum. "Just wait, my friend," Henry mused, tucking the money away as he departed. "Just you wait." He walked away, and the doorman in a green uniform called out, "Your car, sir." "Not yet," Henry replied. "I think I'll enjoy some fresh air first." He meandered down the street. It was nearly midnight, with a cool and pleasant evening enveloping the vibrant city that remained awake. Henry could sense the bustling energy. The protrusion in the interior pocket of his coat, with a substantial roll of cash rested, was touched by him as he gently patted it with one hand. It represented a significant amount for merely an hour's effort. Yet, he pondered the future and contemplated his subsequent decision. In a month, he could effortlessly amass $1 million. If he desired, he could achieve even more, with no boundaries on his potential earnings. As he strolled through the crisp evening air of London, Henry began to deliberate on his next strategy. Had this been a fictional narrative rather than a reality, it would have been essential to concoct an unexpected and thrilling conclusion. Crafting something dramatic and distinctive would have posed a little challenge. So, before revealing the actual events that transpired in Henry's life, let's take a moment to consider the approach a skilled fiction writer might adopt to conclude this tale. His notes might suggest the following. First, Henry must meet a demise reminiscent of Ira Khan, for he had breached the Yogi Code, exploiting his abilities for selfish purposes. Second, his death ought to be carried out in an unusual and captivating fashion that would astonish the audience. Third, for instance, he could return to his apartment and begin tallying his fortune, relishing in the moment, only to suddenly be struck by unease, experiencing discomfort in his chest. Fourth, he would grow alarmed and opt to retire to bed instantly for rest, removing his clothing and moving unclad to the wardrobe for his pajamas. As he passes the full-length mirror that stands against the wall, he halts and gazes at his naked reflection. Out of habit, he instinctively starts to focus, and then, fifthly, in an instant, he perceives himself beyond his skin. He views through it similarly to how he observed those playing cards earlier. It resembles an X-ray image, but far superior. While an X-ray reveals merely bones and dense areas, Henry sees it all. He can visualize his arteries and veins with blood coursing through them, as well as his liver, kidneys, intestines, and heart in motion. 6. He focuses on the source of his chest discomfort, believing he sees a small dark mass inside the major vein leading to his heart's right side. The presence of this dark mass raises questions about its nature. It must indicate an obstruction. It has to be a clot, a blood clot. 7th, initially, the clot appears stationary, but then it shifts with movement so slight, no greater than a millimeter or so. 2, the blood within the vein surges behind the clot, forcing it onward, causing the clot to shift forward roughly half an inch along the vein toward the heart. Henry observed in horror, aware as nearly everyone in the world is that a blood clot that is dislodged and is moving through a vein will eventually make its way to the heart. If the clot is substantial, it will lodge in the heart, and death is often the result. While this outcome might fit the narrative of fiction well, this is no tale of make-believe. It is reality. The only inaccuracies within this account are Henry's name, and the name of the gambling establishment. Henry's name must remain concealed for his protection, as must the actual name of the casino for obvious reasons. Still, this is a true account, and as a true account, it necessitates an authentic conclusion. The real denouement may not be as thrilling or eerie as a fictional one could be, yet it is undeniably intriguing. Here is what truly transpired. After meandering through the streets of London for about an hour, Henry returned to Lord's house, retrieved his car, and then headed back to his apartment. He was a man steeped in confusion. He couldn't comprehend why such a remarkable achievement stirred in him so little excitement. If a similar event had occurred 3 years prior, before he immersed himself in the yoga business, he would have been overwhelmed with joy, dancing in public and racing to the nearest nightclub to celebrate with champagne. The odd thing was that he didn't feel exhilarated at all. Instead, there was a profound sense of melancholy. It had all seemed too effortless. Each time he placed a bet, he was convinced victory was assured. There was no thrill, no tension, no risk of loss. He recognized that he could now traverse the globe and amass millions, yet he wondered if such pursuits would bring him any joy. It slowly dawned on Henry that nothing holds value if abundance becomes readily accessible, particularly wealth. Moreover, was it not plausible that the journey he undertook to attain yoga prowess radically shifted his perspective on existence? Certainly, that was a possibility. Henry drove home and went straight to bed, waking up late the next morning. Yet, upon rising, he found no improvement in his mood compared to the previous night. When he spotted the sizable stack of cash still sitting on his dressing table, he was hit with a sudden, intense revulsion towards it. He found himself not wanting it at all, but he could not pinpoint the reason behind such feelings. The truth was that he had no desire to be involved at all. He grasped a bundle, which consisted entirely of 20-pound notes, with a total of 330 of them. Stepping onto the balcony of his flat, he stood there in dark red silk pajamas, gazing down at the street beneath. Henry's flat was located on Cairn Street, situated in the heart of London's most elite and costly area, known as Mayfair. One end of Cairn Street intersects with Berkeley Square, while the other converges at Park Lane. Henry resided 3 stories above the street, and outside his bedroom was a small balcony with iron railings that extended over the street below. It was June. The sun-filled morning marked around 11 o'clock. Despite it being a Sunday, several people were meandering down the sidewalks. Henry removed a single 20-pound note from his stack and let it drop over the balcony. A gust of wind caught it, sending it soaring towards Park Lane. He observed as it danced and swirled in the air before landing across the street, right in front of an elderly gentleman. This man was clad in a worn brown overcoat and a floppy hat, ambling along by himself. He noticed a note as it blew past him and paused to pick it up, holding it in both hands as he scrutinized it closely. After inspecting it, he lifted his gaze skyward. "Hey there," Henry called out, cupping his hands around his mouth. "That's for you. It's a gift." The old man remained motionless, the note in front of him, staring up at the figure above. "Put it in your pocket," Henry yelled. "Take it home." His voice echoed down the street, capturing the attention of many passers-by. Henry pulled another note from the pile and tossed it down, but the spectators below remained still, merely observing. They were puzzled, having no clue about the scene unfolding. A man stood on the balcony shouting something while tossing what appeared to be paper. Everyone tracked the fluttering note as it descended until it landed near a young couple arm in arm on the pavement across the road. The man unwound his arm and attempted to catch the paper as it drifted past him. Though he missed, he retrieved it from the ground and examined it closely. Onlookers from both sides of the street focused their attention on the young man, as the paper seemed to resemble a banknote, and they awaited the outcome. "It's 20, the man exclaimed, jumping up in excitement. "Keep it, it's a 20 note." Henry yelled at him. "It's yours." "You mean this?" The man shouted back, extending the note out at arm's length. "Can I truly keep it?" There was a sudden surge of enthusiasm along both sides of the street, and in an instant, everyone surged into the road, converging beneath the balcony. They raised their arms high and started shouting, "Me! How about one for me? Drop us another one. Governor, send down a few more." Henry tossed down another 5 or 6 bills, prompting screams and cheers as the notes fluttered in the breeze and descended toward the crowd. A raucous scramble ensued as people reached the falling bills, yet it was all in good spirits. Laughter filled the air as onlookers found humor in the sight of a man, wearing only pajamas, hurling valuable notes from 3 stories up. Many in the crowd had never encountered a 20 note until that moment, but simultaneously, something else began to unfold. The speed at which news travels through a city is astounding. The excitement surrounding Henry's actions raced up and down Cairn Street and spilled into both the smaller and larger neighboring lanes. In no time, 1,000 men, women, and children congested the road beneath Henry's balcony. Drivers trapped in traffic exited their cars to join the throng. Chaos soon enveloped Curzon Street. At this moment, Henry simply lifted his arm, swung it outward, and tossed the entire bundle of notes skyward. Over 6,000 bills cascaded down toward the ecstatic crowd, resulting in an extraordinary spectacle. People leaped to catch the notes before they could hit the ground, and the air was filled with pushing, shoving, yelling, and stumbling as the scene devolved into a chaotic tangle of excited bodies. Amid the commotion, Henry heard his doorbell ringing loudly from inside his apartment. He stepped away from the balcony and opened the front door to find a large policeman with a black mustache standing there, hands firmly on his hips. "You!" he shouted sternly. "What on earth do you think you're doing?" "Good morning, officer," Henry replied. "I apologize to the crowd. I didn't anticipate it would escalate like this. I was merely handing out some money." The officer shouted back, "You're causing a disturbance, creating an obstruction, inciting a riot, and blocking the whole street." Henry responded, "I said I was sorry. I promise I won't do it again. They will disperse soon." The policeman removed one hand from his hip and revealed a 20 note he had in his palm. "Ha ha," Henry exclaimed. "You've got one." "I'm really pleased for you," the officer remarked. "But you need to stop that laughter because I have some serious inquiries regarding these 20 bills. He retrieved a notebook from his chest pocket. "First," he continued, "where did you actually acquire them?" "I won them," Henry replied. "I had a fortunate evening." He proceeded to reveal the name of the establishment where he had come into the money, and the officer jotted it down in his small notebook. "Verify it," Henry added. "They'll confirm it's true." The officer lowered the notebook and met Henry's gaze, stating matter-of-factly, "I believe your account. I'm convinced you're being honest. But that doesn't absolve you of what you've done." "I didn't do anything wrong," Henry insisted. "You're a complete fool," the officer retorted, gradually igniting his anger again. "You're a moron. If you've been fortunate enough to win such a huge amount and you want to discard it, why not do it sensibly instead of tossing it out the window?" "Why not?" Henry replied, grinning. "It's just as effective a method as any." "It's an incredibly foolish way to get rid of it," the officer exclaimed. "Why didn't you donate it to where it could really help, like a hospital or an orphanage? There are orphanages everywhere struggling to afford gifts to children even at Christmas. And here you are, a little brat who has no clue what it's like to be in need, just throwing cash in the street. It frustrates me, it really does." "An orphanage?" Henry questioned. "Yes, an orphanage," the officer shouted. "I grew up in one, so I know very well how it feels." With that, the officer turned and hurried down the stairs toward the street. Henry remained still, the officer's words and the genuine anger behind them striking him directly. "An orphanage," he murmured aloud. "That's quite a thought. But why limit it to just one orphanage? Why not multiple ones?" Suddenly, an extraordinary idea began to form in his mind, one that would transform everything. Henry closed the front door and returned to his apartment, feeling a surge of excitement swell within him. He started pacing, mentally listing the elements that would make his brilliant idea feasible. "Number one," he declared, "I can access a substantial sum of money daily. Number two, I must avoid visiting the same casino more than once each year. Number three, I should not win excessively at any particular casino, or I'll raise suspicions. I propose I limit my spending to £20,000 a night, amounting to £20,000 per night for 365 days. That calculation totals up to £7,300,000. Henry announced as he took a pencil and paper to sort it out. "Quite right. Next, point number 5, I must keep on the move, staying no more than 2 or 3 nights in any one location to avoid stirring up notice. I'll travel from London to Monte Carlo, then to Kinbrut, Dovia, Las Vegas, Mexico City, Buenos Aires, Nassau, and so forth. 6, with the earnings I accumulate, I will establish a top-tier orphanage in each nation I visit. I intend to become a modern-day Robin Hood, taking funds from bookmakers and gambling establishments to support the children. While this notion may sound overly sentimental as a dream, if I can actually make it materialize, there would be anything but trite or mushy. It would be truly remarkable. 7th, I will need assistance, someone reliable to manage all that money, purchase properties, and coordinate the entire setup. A financial steward, someone I can trust. How about John Winston?" John Winston was Henry's accountant, responsible for his tax affairs, investments, and any other financial matters. Henry had known John for 18 years, and their friendship had blossomed. However, until now, John only recognized Henry as the affluent, carefree playboy who had never engaged in honest work in his life. "You must be crazy," John Winston remarked when Henry shared his ambitious plans. "Nobody has ever created a strategy to outsmart the casinos." From his bag, Henry pulled out a brand new, unopened deck of cards. "Come on," he urged. "Let's play some blackjack. You're dealing, and don't even think about those cards being rigged. It's a fresh pack." With a solemn air, the two men spent nearly an hour in Winston's office, overlooking Berkeley Square, playing blackjack while using matchsticks as betting chips each stick worth 25 pounds. After 50 minutes, Henry had amassed a remarkable 34,000 pounds in winnings, leaving John Winston astounded. "How do you manage this?" he inquired. "Place the deck face down on the table," Henry instructed, and Winston complied. Henry focused on the top card for 4 seconds. "That's the knave of hearts," he declared confidently. It was indeed. "The next card is a three of hearts," he stated, which was correct. He continued through the entire deck, accurately naming each card as he went. "Go on," John Winston urged. "Explain how this is happening." This typically composed and logical individual leaned over his desk, staring wide-eyed at Henry as if witnessing something celestial. "You do realize this is entirely impossible," he remarked. "It's not impossible," Henry replied. "It simply is. Extremely challenging. I am the sole individual on the planet capable of accomplishing this task." The telephone rang on John Winston's desk. He picked up the receiver and instructed his secretary, "No more calls for now, Susan, until I say otherwise, not even for my wife." He glanced up, anticipating Henry to continue. Henry then elaborated on how he gained his extraordinary abilities. He recounted discovering the notebook, spoke of Imrat Khan, and detailed his relentless focus on training his mind for the past 3 years. Upon concluding, John Winston inquired, "Have you attempted walking on fire?" "No," Henry replied, "and I have no intention of doing so." "What leads you to believe you'll succeed with the cards in the casino?" Henry recounted his experience the previous night at Lord House. 6,600 pounds, John Winston exclaimed. "Did you genuinely win that amount in cash?" "Listen," Henry responded, "I just won 34,000 pounds from you in under an hour, so 6,000 pounds was the minimum I could take home." Henry remarked that it took tremendous effort not to win even more, and he added that John would become the wealthiest person alive. "I don't aspire to be the richest man on earth," Henry stated. "Not anymore." He then shared his vision for orphanages, concluding with, "Will you partner with me, John? Will you be my financial backer, my bank, my manager, and handle everything else? Millions will flow in annually." John Winston, a careful and sensible accountant, was hesitant to agree without due consideration. "I want to observe you in action first," he replied. That night, they made their way to the Ritz Club on Ken Street. As Henry noted, he couldn't visit Lord's house again for the time being. During the first spin of the roulette wheel, Henry wagered 100 pounds on number 27, which won. On the subsequent spin, he placed his bet on number 4, which also came through. A total profit of 7,500 pounds was noted when an error beside Henry remarked, "I've just lost 55,000 pounds. How do you manage this?" "It's just luck," Henry replied. They headed into the blackjack area, where Henry racked up another 10,000 pounds within 30 minutes, then paused outside on the street, as John Winston stated, "I can see it now." "I'll join you," he continued. Henry responded, "We begin tomorrow. Do you really plan on doing this nightly?" "Absolutely," said Henry. "I will move rapidly from place to place, from one country to another, and I'll send the profits back to you daily through the banks. Can you imagine how much that accumulates in a year? Millions?" Cheerily, Henry estimated it to be around 7 million annually. "In that case, I can't function in this country," John Winston replied. "The tax authorities will take it all." Henry countered, "Go wherever you need. It makes no difference to me. I trust you fully. John Winston suggested Switzerland. But not tomorrow. I can't just leave on a whim. I'm not a single man without commitments like you. I need to discuss this with my wife and kids, give notice to my business partners, sell my house, find another in Switzerland, and enroll the children in school. My dear fellow, these matters take time. Henry then withdrew 17,500 pounds from his pocket and handed it over, saying, "Here's some cash to keep you going until you get settled. But please be quick. I want to get started within a week." A week later, John Winston had settled in Lausanne with an office situated high on a beautiful hillside overlooking Lake Geneva, while his family would relocate as swiftly as possible. Henry began his casino ventures, and 1 year later, he had transferred just over £8 million to John Winston in Lausanne. The money was routed 5 days a week to a Swiss firm named Orphanages SA, with only John Winston and Henry knowing its origins and intended use. The Swiss authorities remained indifferent to the flow of funds. Henry utilized banks for his transactions, with Monday's transfers typically the largest, encompassing his earnings from Friday, Saturday, and Sunday days when the banks were inactive. He operated with remarkable haste, with John Winston often only aware of Henry's location from the bank that issued the money on a given day. One day it might arrive from a bank in Manila, the next from Bangkok. Other times it came from Las Vegas, Curacao, Freeport, Grand Cayman, San Juan, Nassau, London, or Beirut. It could originate from virtually anywhere that housed a major casino. For 7 years, everything was running smoothly, and nearly £50 million had been deposited in Lausanne securely. John Winston successfully set up 3 orphanages, one in France, one in England, and one in the United States, with plans for 5 more in development. Then, complications arose. Within the casino community, word travels fast, and although Henry was always exceptionally cautious not to draw too much from any single venue on any given night, the whispers eventually caught up with him. One evening in Las Vegas, he foolishly took $100,000 from 3 different casinos, all linked to the same organized crime group. The following morning, as Henry was in his hotel room getting ready to leave for the airport, a bellhop knocked at his door and informed him that 2 men were waiting for him in the lobby, while others were reportedly securing the rear exit. The bellhop made clear that these men were dangerous, and he was doubtful about Henry's chances of making out alive if he chose to go downstairs just then. "Why are you telling me this?" Henry inquired. "Are you trying to help me?" "I'm not on anyone's side," the bellhop replied, "but it's common knowledge that you won a lot of money last night, and I thought you might consider giving me a tip for the warning." "Thanks," Henry said, "but how can I escape?" "I'll give you $1,000 if you can get me out of this mess," Henry offered. "That's simple," the bellhop replied. "Take off your clothes and wear my uniform. Then walk through the lobby with your suitcase. But first, you need to tie me up so that it looks like I was helpless and couldn't assist you. I'll say you had a weapon and I couldn't do anything. How will you tie me up?" Henry asked. "The cord is right here in my pocket," the bellhop grinned. Henry slipped into the bellhop's gold and green uniform, which fit reasonably well, then secured the bellhop effectively with the cord and stuffed a handkerchief into his mouth. Finally, he placed 10 $100 bills beneath the carpet for the bellhop to grab later. Down in the lobby, 2 stocky thugs with dark hair were watching the guests as they exited the elevators, but they barely paid attention to the man in green and gold bellhop's attire, who stepped out with a suitcase and confidently walked across the lobby and through the swinging doors that led outside. At the airport, Henry altered his flight and boarded the next plane to Los Angeles, aware that things were about to become considerably more difficult from that point on, though he realized that the bellhop had sparked an idea within him. In Los Angeles, as well as the surrounding areas of Hollywood and Beverly Hills, where the film industry resides, Henry pursued the top makeup artist in the field, Max Engelman. Upon contacting him, Henry immediately took a liking to Max. "What's your salary?" Henry inquired. "Approximately $40,000 per year," replied Max. "I will pay you $100,000, Henry offered, "if you agree to come with me as my makeup artist." "What's the big idea?" Max asked curiously. Henry proceeded to explain his vision, revealing it to Max, who was only the second individual privy to such information. John Winston was the first. When Henry demonstrated his card-reading abilities, Max was astounded. "Good heavens, man," he exclaimed. "You could strike it rich." "I already have," Henry disclosed, "having made 10 fortunes, yet I strive to amass 10 more." He informed Max about the orphanages he had established, with John Winston's assistance, leading to 3 already set up and additional ones in progress. Max, a small, dark-skinned man who fled Vienna when the Nazis invaded, had never married or formed any ties, fueling his excitement. "It's insane," he exclaimed. "It's the most outrageous idea I've ever encountered. Count me in." From that moment on, Max Engelman accompanied Henry everywhere, hauling around an extensive collection of wigs, false beards, mustaches, sideburns, and makeup supplies that was unparalleled. He could transform his master into one of 30 to 40 unrecognizable personas, allowing Henry to evade the watchful eyes of the casino managers who had begun to monitor him closely. As a result, they never saw him reappear as Mr. Henry Sugar. In fact, just a year following their Las Vegas adventure, Henry and Max returned to that perilous city. On a warm, starlit evening, Henry discreetly collected $80,000 from the first of the major casinos he had previously frequented, all while disguised as an elderly Brazilian diplomat, leaving the casino completely unaware of the incident. With Henry no longer presenting himself as his true self at the casinos, several logistical matters required attention, including the procurement of false identity cards and passports. For instance, entry into the Monte Carlo casino necessitated showing a passport. With Max's support, Henry visited Monte Carlo an additional 11 times, each time under a different alias and in a new disguise. Max took great delight in this endeavor, relishing the opportunity to craft new characters for Henry. "I have an entirely new one for you today," he would declare. "Just wait until you see it. Today, you will be an Arab sheik from Kuwait." "Do we have an Arab passport?" Henry would query. "An Arab documentation?" Max would respond confidently. "Absolutely. Everything is in order. John Winston has provided me a splendid passport in the name of His Royal Highness Sheikh Abu bin Bey." And thus, their adventures progressed over the years. Henry and John formed a bond akin to brothers, acting as a duo on a mission, navigating through casinos globally and channeling the funds directly to John Winston in Switzerland, where the organization named Orphanages S.A. prospered exponentially. Henry passed away last year at the age of 63, marking the completion of his journey after nearly 20 years of dedicated effort. His personal ledger documented 371 significant casinos across 21 different nations or islands, all of which he had frequented multiple times without ever experiencing a loss. According to the records maintained by John Winston, Henry amassed a total of $144 million. He established 21 well-administered orphanages worldwide, one situated in every country he had visited. All these institutions were managed and funded from Lausanne by John and his team. However, one might wonder how neither Max Angelman nor John Winston, came by this knowledge and what led him to pen this story. The answer will become clear. Shortly after Henry's passing, John Winston contacted me from Switzerland, introducing himself as the leader of a company known as Orphanages S.A. He inquired if I would travel to Lausanne to discuss writing a concise history of the organization. I was uncertain how he acquired my name. Perhaps he compiled a list of writers and randomly selected one. He promised attractive compensation, mentioning that a remarkable individual, Henry Sugar, had recently passed, and he believed people should be informed about his contributions. Initially, I questioned whether the tale warranted documentation. "Fine," said a man now managing $144 million. "Let me know if you're not interested. I can find other writers." His remark piqued my interest. I responded, "No. Wait. Can you tell me more about who Henry Sugar was and what he accomplished? I've never heard of him." In just 5 minutes on the phone, John Winston revealed details about Henry Sugar's formerly concealed career, which would no longer remain a secret now that Henry had passed and wouldn't gamble again. I listened with rapt attention and declared, "I'll take the next flight." John Winston appreciated my eagerness. Upon arriving in Lausanne, I met John Winston, now over 70, and Max Angelman, who was of a similar age. Both were still reeling from the impact of Henry's death, with Max visibly more affected than John, having stood by Henry's side for over 13 years. "I loved him," Max stated, a shadow crossing his face. "He was an extraordinary man, always selfless, never keeping a dime of his winnings except what was necessary for travel and sustenance. I recall a time in Beirut when he had just withdrawn 500,000 francs from the bank to send back home. John, during lunch, we visited a spot where we enjoyed a modest meal consisting of an omelet and a bottle of wine. When the check arrived, both Henry and I found ourselves without any means to cover it. He was a wonderful man." John Winston shared all his knowledge with me, revealing the original dark blue notebook penned by Dr. John Cartwright in Bombay in 1934. I meticulously copied it, word for word, as Henry always kept it on hand. Ultimately, John Winston mentioned that he had memorized everything. He presented me with account records from orphanages, documenting Henry's wins meticulously over 2 decades, which was truly an impressive collection. After he concluded, I remarked to him, "There's a significant void in this narrative, Mr. Winston. You disclose nearly nothing about Henry's journeys and his escapades in the world's casinos." "That's the narrative about Max," John Winston stated. "Max is well informed on the subject since he was present, but he expresses a desire to attempt writing on his own. He's already begun." "Then why not allow Max to compose the entire piece?" I inquired. "He prefers not to," John Winston replied. "He only wishes to focus on the stories of Henry and Max. It should be an incredible tale if he manages to complete it, but he is elderly now, much like myself, and I am skeptical that he will pull it off." "One last question," I said. "You continuously refer to him as Henry Sugar, yet you mentioned that wasn't his real name. Wouldn't you prefer me to state his true identity when I write the story?" "No," John Winston replied. "Max and I pledge never disclose it." "Oh." "Sooner or later, it will probably come to light, since he hailed from a rather distinguished English family. However, I would appreciate it if you refrain from investigating. Just refer to him simply as Mr. Henry Sugar." And so I have. That was the extraordinary tale of Henry Sugar.